The first, Captain Midnight Incident. Broadcast interruptions are an interesting staple in horror, with some becoming infamous like the Max Headroom Incident and the Southern Broadcast Interruption. Another really famous one is the Captain Midnight Incident, which occurred on April 27, 1986 on HBO. What many don't know is that this hijacking occurred twice, as the perpetrator did a test the week prior. The perpetrator was John R. McDougal, a satellite dealer whose profit margins were decreased thanks to HBO's price increase. The Showtime and Movie channel can only be accessed through buying an expensive scrambler machine and paying $12.95 per month. This caused an overall decline in satellite dishes being sold, so McDougal decided to do something about it. To protest, he hijacked HBO's signal twice. The first occurrence was on April 20th, 1986, simply testing if this would work by showing a color bar on screen. HBO fixed this after 3 minutes, thinking this wasn't anything to concern over. Then, a week later, this message appeared during a showing of the film The Falcon and the Snowman. It reads, "Good evening, HBO. From Captain Midnight. $12.95 per month? No way. Showtime/Movie Channel, beware." This appeared on screen for 4.5 minutes before an HBO technician fixed it. McDougal would be deemed Captain Midnight and was arrested soon after. He was put on probation and made to pay a $5,000 fine, though some in the media thought this occurrence could be considered an act of domestic terrorism. The second broadcast was archived by Kenneth Burns in 2013, who recorded that showing of The Falcon and the Snowman all those years ago. The first recording, while not as interesting, is completely lost. It was most likely never recorded, as it occurred sometime after midnight. Zwerg Nase. This film was reportedly made sometime in the 1970s or 80s. It's based on a German fairy tale from 1826 that translates to Dwarf Nose. It follows Jacob, the son of a cobbler. He helps his family sell produce, and one day encounters a woman with a long nose and a skinny neck. He insults her after she makes a mess, so she curses him to look like her. Jacob ends up helping her by carrying produce to her home, and ends up staying there a lot longer than expected. He ends up having a long nose and skinny neck too, and his family chases him away once he returns home. Jacob ends up meeting another person with this ailment, where they work together to lift the curse. Many who grew up in the Soviet Union recall this film, with a user named Volmarok describing the film as this. The film was shot in the Gothic style, in the genre of realism. From the point of view of camera work, makeup, clothes, made very worthy. There are few scenery, only the necessary minimum, but considering that the camera was filming in a narrow, confined space, these decorations were quite enough. It was filmed by cameras on a magnetic tape. The film is television, the image is clear, and the colors are dim, in gray and brown tones. The lighting is diffused, because in the film it's autumn. Main hero moved awkwardly like slow-mo, as if pressed to the ground. One of the bright memorable scenes, human heads in the witch's basket were real and bloody with open mouths. The camera showed heads at close range. Many tried comparing it to other adaptations, with certain false rumors cropping up. Then, in December 2023, Lost Media Wiki user Zooper suspected they were talking about the 1955 puppet version. It's half an hour long, but they suspect it was even longer than that. But for now, this remains an unconfirmed piece of lost media. Encarnacion Bechaves commercial. Weirdly enough, this is a lost commercial for a flower shop in Manila, Philippines. It aired only locally on the channels ABC5 and IBC13, with many viewers reporting that it was unintentionally disturbing. It's completely lost, but various users on Facebook and Reddit have described what they remember from it. It starts with a camera zooming into a red rose surrounded by a black background. The song, Shepherd Moons by Enya plays, which is very eerie yet melancholy. We then see a young girl in a toga running over to her mother, hugging her before cutting to a shot of 3 bouquets. The next shot shows a couple, with the girl holding the bouquet. A narrator then says, "When you care enough to send the best." More B-roll of flowers is shown as the narrator continues with, "Say it with flowers" from Encarnacion Bechaves. After even more B-roll, we get to the final scene, with a woman in a red dress. She looks at the camera with a strange look, then holding roses in front of her face. The shot pauses until the screen slowly fades to the logo of the company. The narrator concludes with, "When the occasion becomes special, you can make it more special with flowers." From Encarnacion Bechaves, Encarnacion Bechaves, where you want to show how much you really care. Many describe that final scene as disturbing, due to how long the camera showed the woman's face. During the early 2000s, the commercial was brought up, though it would receive increased attention in 2018 due to the lost media community. Not much was found though besides the companies involved, though the Lost Media Wiki would promote the search in 2022. A user from the Spooky Advertisements group said that her uncle recorded it back in the day, though couldn't gain access to the VHS due to family issues. Many have begun making recreations, but the original has eluded the community. Mexia Supermarket footage. Located in Mexia, Texas, this store has a strange history behind it, as it used to be occupied by Daniel's Food Stores. In 1994, an 18-year-old manager of the store was found dead after being forced to assist in a robbery. The killer was never found. In October 1997, the store was reopened as Mexia Supermarket, though it's unknown who the owners were. Reports claim they came from Laos. It would only stay open for less than 2 years, with the owners filing for bankruptcy in the summer of 1999 before returning to their home country. The store would be abandoned by August, though miscommunications led to none of the food being relocated. Everything was left inside, and the power would be turned off by October. This turned the store into a biohazard, and many in the area reported how ghastly it smelled. This led to the Fort Worth Department of Environmental Management investigating it, having to wear air filtering masks, hazmat suits, and oxygen tanks. What they found was truly disturbing. The place was filled with rats, mice, cockroaches, flies, and more. There were so many flies that the workers couldn't even see their hands in front of them. Rotting dairy caused their packaging to explode. Packaged meat was covered in some sort of grayish-black goo. Rat shit caked the floors. Maggots were everywhere too. The stuff of nightmares. It took months for the workers to clean, as everything had to be removed by hand, and precautions were met to make sure no animals entered or exited the building. This could all be its own video, and I might make that in the future. But for the purpose of this video, what's lost is most of the footage recorded by workers. Only around a minute's worth of footage has been shown, as seen in an episode of the docuseries Life After People. In the episode, The Last Supper, it discusses what would happen to our food supply if we all vanished. A search began last year thanks to a friend of the channel, Gubby. Gubby's initial coverage implored others to begin looking into the case. More photographs would be found thanks to research conducted by Benjamin McHale, who also contacted the special collections at North Texas University. This didn't lead anywhere, as it could not digitize a recording, so Benjamin turned to Brian Borner. Brian worked at the Fort Worth Department of Environmental Management and said he had a copy of the footage in a VHS, though by the time Life After People sought the footage in 2010, it had deteriorated. This is why only brief amounts of footage were shown there. It seems like the city of Fort Worth itself may be the only ones of a copy. House of Horrors. This is one of 3 PSAs made for a campaign addressing the condition hemophilia. If you don't know what that is, it's a rare disorder that makes it so your blood doesn't clot properly, making it so you bleed longer than what's typical. These 3 PSAs are made by the National Hemophilia Foundation during the 1970s, with the only one that's available being The Clotting Factor, the other 2 being House of Horrors and I'm a Hemophiliac are lost. They aired in New York State, though were also shown at the 1974 congressional hearing regarding hemophilia. Within the documentation of this hearing is a transcript for House of Horrors, dated December 14, 1970. The PSA is 60 seconds long, featuring a man who has to be cautious of everything in his home. The narrator states, "The House of Horrors. To a hemophiliac, his own home is a house of horrors, where anything can make him bleed and send him to the hospital. But the most horrific thing of all is that we finally have a way to control his bleeding, only he's not getting it because he can't afford it. The only way he's going to get it is if you give it to him. We need your money. We're so close, yet so far." Some leads in the search went nowhere, as most articles led to no new information. Recollections from viewers recalled the voiceover being chilling, and the visuals consisting of twisted camera shots of things like scissors and a scratching cat. There's also audio playing of demonic, childlike laughter. Telewizja Solidarność hijacking. This is yet another TV hijacking, though this time it's a Polish TV station translated as Solidarność Television. In 1985, a group of astronomers from the University of Toruń, led by Jan Hanaj, interrupted their broadcast. This was meant to protest the Polish government for the Solidarity movement, in order to support workers' rights in the country. They interrupted the broadcast of a Polish soap opera, showing the Solidarity logo with the text, "Enough price increases, lies, and oppressions," and "Solidarity Toruń. It's our duty to boycott the election. Solidarity Toruń." It's unknown how truly effective this all was due to some frequency errors, as it was reported that the brightness of the image would fluctuate. The interruption was broadcasted from Jan's house, and he, along with the other perpetrators, were all caught by September 1985. They were each sentenced to a year in prison and suspension for 3 years. This case would gain attention in 2007 thanks to a recreation by YouTube user 4K Wadra, though in recent years its accuracy would be questioned. Last year, Lost Media Wiki user Gabibo stated, "My suggestion for more accurate recreation, Genlog 2 composite video signals, connect them to an RF modular each, with both set to the same channel, and then to a potentiometer each to control the signal strength of the two signals." Groupie. Filmed sometime between 1996 and 1998, Groupie is a never-released short film by Marilyn Manson of all people. Manson is an incredibly bizarre musician known for his dark style and loads of controversies that span to this day. Both of these things greatly correlate with this film, as it involves depraved sexual acts inflicted in front of a crowd. Manson had the film shot at a house party he was hosting, with the guests being told that a woman would be arriving to get filmed. Even if knowing this, they wouldn't expect what would actually happen. Much of the plot hasn't been revealed, but what we do know is that the film opens with Manson sucking his bandmate's penis, before the actress playing the groupie arrives. She is forced by another Manson bandmate to drink a wine glass of piss, though she convinces Manson to do it with her. The rest of the film reportedly features the use of a gun, the groupie being tied up, a fight breaking out, and blood being shed. Again, the audience didn't know this was for a film, and thought it was all real. Some of the guests were reportedly even shaken up by the display. The only 3 people to have seen the completed film are Manson himself, Andy Dick, and Manson's former manager, Tony Chiola. The latter urged Manson to never show the film, thinking it could end his career and even get him arrested. In a 2002 episode of the show, Table for 5, which is also lost media despite having the transcript, the film is discussed. Manson says that there's a possibility to release it on home media, but this never occurred. All we have is a single clip, as the rest of the film has been tightly held onto by Manson himself. He teased its release in 2016 with his Antichrist Superstar 20th anniversary box set, but that was probably a bluff. The original version of Faces of Death. Faces of Death is a film series showcasing various ways humans and animals can die, usually showing their deaths and the aftermath. However, these are usually faked for the sake of the film, though the occasional real footage is shown. This is due to controversies relating to the first film in the series, as the footage was collected in strange ways. The original version of Faces of Death features more real footage, gathered from private collectors and doctors. The director, John Allen Swartz, knew a doctor who allowed him access to view and even film an autopsy. All this footage greatly disturbed him, but he continued on with the production. Those associated with these deceased people were not told of this, but this never affected the movie. What did was the investors, who wanted better footage of these deaths. This led to much of it being faked and replicated, leading to much of the film being altered. Scenes from the original were even recreated with additional shots to impress viewers, which actually worked. Faces of Death would release in 1978, getting $35 million in the box office, a cult following, and many sequels. Though many in that cult following are curious about the original film, wishing to see it. This topic was discussed in greater detail in the 30th anniversary edition of the film, where it explained how production got the footage and discussions with the attorneys. Reality show. This is a bizarre documentary film that actually began as a reality show called Rock the Party, made by a guy named Dan Sherbandi. He described it as, "I'm gonna make another show, I thought. Make a reality show. I'm gonna have sex, I'm gonna have craziness, I'm gonna have wild partying. Like Girls Gone Wild, but more depth to it." Not much is known about this guy besides the fact that he's a loony prick who lives in Vegas and somehow got rich. To make this show, he hired random amateur crew members and 10 girls on Craigslist. These girls were meant to stay at the Rosarita Beach Motel in Baja, Mexico, though instead of this being a typical reality show experience, Sherbandi used it as an excuse to have sex with these women and take advantage of them. Now, the cast and crew were paid, but this was an elaborate excuse for Sherbandi to fulfill his sexual fantasies. The director he hired, Colin Trevorrow, started interviewing those involved and began piecing together a documentary. If you don't know who Colin is, he would end up directing Safety Not Guaranteed and the Jurassic World films. He'd end up convincing Sherbandi to help with this project, allowing him access to more footage, though this would allow the man to gain an executive producer credit and receive profits from the documentary. I just find it so bizarre that this guy is contributing to a film exposing how slimy and demented he is. But hey, get that bag, man. The film would be completed a year later in 2004, with it being screened at 3 events, including the New York International Independent Film and Video Festival. After these screenings, Shirbondi would request the film never be made public, with Collins stating this in a 2012 interview. That would have been years ago. You actually can't get it anywhere now. The guy it's about, the movie is basically a documentary about how awful he is. He actually lost a job or something over it, so he made us take it down everywhere and you can't find it anymore. In the same interview of DVD Talk, someone named Sarah Vizcarrando is brought up. They claim this individual has a bootleg copy of the movie, but who knows if that's even true. All we do have is a trailer uploaded back in 2006. Otto-Triin. This Estonian children's character was incredibly prominent in the early 1990s, featuring on his own TV show, live events, and even being used to market chocolate bars. Despite all this, the show is mostly lost, despite having a decent run from 1993 to 1998. The channel it ran on, TV3, is privately run and has no intentions of archiving any of its content. This wasn't simply due to the show falling into obscurity, but because of much darker reasons. I didn't just include this entry on our list due to how creepy Autot-Trin looks, though it definitely contributes. Apparently he's supposed to be some sort of woolly dinosaur, but he looks like an uncanny mess. Some say the show was cancelled due to a deadly car crash caused by one of the producers, Tonu Pavo, which occurred in 1997. But the main reason why the show was locked away was due to the actions of its creator and the man behind the mask, Venno Lusar. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. After Autot-Trin concluded, Venno would contribute to various other children's shows over the next 2 decades. In 2019, he was investigated for claims of sexually abusing a child, and this led to his arrest after CP material was found in his home, along with an unlicensed gun. Despite the undeniable evidence against him, Venno would state, "For 26 years I've been doing TV shows for kids, running kids events and concerts, learning how to tune myself in with the kids and doing it well. But I have no sexual interest in children and my soul is pure." He would only be sentenced to 4 months in prison and another 5 years of probation. The only surviving footage from the show comes from the 20th anniversary, along with a full episode that was soon taken down. The Monsters. In early 2019, there was an increase in attention towards the Jeffrey Epstein case, as an investigation into the 2006 plea agreement went underway. Because of this new attention, Donald Trump's former political strategist, Steve Bannon, decided to interview Epstein in spring of 2019. The interview was conducted at Epstein's New York mansion, within one 15-hour session. This interview was for an unreleased documentary called The Monsters, that would focus on exposing Epstein's crimes and those he was associated with. All we have from it is a trailer, which gives us a little information about the topics of the interview. Bannon questions Epstein on his support of the Time's Up movement, which aims to raise awareness of sexual harassment. I feel like I don't need to explain why that's hypocritical.
I made my living from old thinking, but the future is for the way women think.
The way women think.
That's correct.
Is that not a sop because of all the depravity you've done against young women? And your new sop is that their women's thinking is the future?
No, I've always believed that women would be able to take over. I'm a firm believer and supporter of Time's Up.
We also know the two discuss the topic of solitary confinement, eerily hinting at a supposed suicide.
Greatest threat to people put in solitary confinement is they try to kill themselves. Imagine that. You're only in a room for 24 hours, you start to go crazy.
The only other clip we know of has never been released, only being seen by Epstein's brother, Mark. Mark said the clip shows Bannon asking about Trump, to which Jeffrey describes him as a crook. Mark also stated in an interview why the documentary has never been released. He told me he had like 16 hours of videotaping with Jeffrey in his vault, and he told me it was protected because it was witness preparation, and it was protected under attorney-client privilege. But the thing is, Bannon's not an attorney. There's also a rumor propped up by Mark and journalist Michael Wolff that this interview was meant as a PR boost for Epstein. That it was meant to media train Epstein for a 60 Minutes interview that never happened. There's even a quote from Bannon in Wolff's book reading, "You're engaging, you're not threatening. You're natural, you're friendly. You don't look at all creepy, you're a sympathetic man." Bannon has denied this. Jeffrey was arrested only a few months after this interview, and we all know what happened next. John Cooper's episode of Bullseye. Bullseye is a British game show that aired from 1982 to 1995. Each episode consists of 3 pairs of contestants working together to solve questions, while at the same time playing a game of darts. One episode from 1989 would end up becoming intentionally lost due to the depraved actions of a contestant. This man's name is John Cooper, a career criminal who has several murders under his belt. His first 2 kills were in December 1985, where he killed siblings Richard and Helen Thomas before burning their house down. Many suspect this was a robbery gone wrong. His second killings were in June 1989, where he tied up and then shot couple Peter and Gwenda Dixon in a successful robbery attempt. In 1996, he attacked 5 kids and threatened them with a gun. 2 of these kids had sexual crimes committed on them. He'd be arrested in 1998, though this was due to his many other burglaries. He'd be questioned by police about those 4 murders, which he got away with until another arrest in mid-2009. He was found guilty 2 years later and is still in prison to this day. Police were actually able to connect him to these murders thanks to his appearance on the show Bullseye, as his look on there resembled a police sketch. After his conviction, the episode would stop appearing in reruns. All we have from the episode are various clips, used in documentaries about John Cooper, as the full episode is confirmed to have been archived by the ITV network it aired on. Albert Fish's final statement. Albert Fish is a serial killer known for murdering various children between the years 1910 and 1928. He'd eventually be caught after the murder of 18-year-old Edward Budd and his 9-year-old sister Grace. To cover up this murder, Fish wrote an anonymous letter admitting to the crimes. He stated his reasons for cannibalizing them, saying that a friend of his inspired him to consume human flesh. This letter was shown to the police, leading them straight to Fish. He confessed, admitting that he was the infamous Gray Man who had been killing people. Despite him and his attorney claiming he was too mentally insane to stand trial, he was sentenced in 1935 to the electric chair. Hours before being executed, Albert Fish would write various notes. It's unknown what was on these notes, as his attorney, James Dempsey, refused to release them publicly. What we do know is that Dempsey was quoted as saying, "I will never show it to anyone. It was the most filthy string of obscenities that I've ever read." These notes are apparently locked away, and both Fish and Dempsey have long been dead. Flight 240's flight recorders. MacLeod Flight 240 is one of many disastrous incidents in aviation history, though the reason why it crashed was seemingly no accident. The flight left Budapest around 11 o'clock at night, intending to reach Lebanon the next day. The last time air traffic control heard from it was 4 hours later near Beirut, where the pilots were instructed to descend to about 6,000 feet and given clearance to land. However, some believe the flight was then given additional instructions, requesting it to turn back around and wait. Shortly after this, air traffic controllers heard no word from Flight 240. They were soon informed that the plane had crashed into the Mediterranean Sea, killing all 60 people on board. Many theories have sprung up to explain what exactly happened, from cargo exploding to it being shot down. This did occur in 1975, only months after the Lebanese Civil War began. Many think the reason we don't know what happened is due to the Hungarian government, who wanted this to be covered up. They refused aid to locate the plane, and also refused to make the crash report public. We could go on all day explaining the multitude of theories surrounding this, but what we're here to speculate on is if the audio from the flight was recorded. Air traffic controller Najib Abu Jaber claimed the plane never made a distress call, most likely meaning the cause of the crash happened suddenly. The device most definitely survived, as they are made explosive and shock resistant. We don't know if it was recovered or not, and if it was, then the Hungarian government would have it. It seems unlikely that the crash report will be leaked in any way, as they have made excuses pertaining to another case. Drowning scene at Rockaway. Both this and our last entry date back to the late 19th century, with this entry being supposedly released in July 1897. During the early years of film, it was common for filmmakers to capture various moments for exhibitions. Some featured more taboo subjects, as seen with this piece titled Drowning Scene at Rockaway. It's named that way due to being filmed on Rockaway Beach, as a cameraman stumbled upon an accident there. 2 boats in the water, 4 people in total, capsized due to the strong tides. They kept getting hit by wave after wave, soon causing all of them to drown. It's unknown how legitimate this all was, as it could have been a staged event for the sake of the film. We don't know the names of the 4 victims, and an essay by Jonathan Arbach pointed out the other discrepancies. Many of these early films exaggerated their contents to lure in viewers, using shock value as a tool. This extends to other similar works like Fishing and Capsizing. Most of the films made by the International Film Company have not survived the test of time, including Drowning Scene at Rockaway. An execution by hanging. Unlike the previous entry, it's confirmed that the contents of this film are real. An Execution by Hanging is an 1898 short film showing the real death of Edward Henson, an African-American man from Florida. He was suspected of sexually assaulting a 14-year-old white girl. Though Henson pleaded not guilty, he maintained his innocence until the very end, being found guilty and sentenced to execution by hanging. After this, he claimed he was willing to hang because, "My soul was saved and I am free of all my sins." This execution was supposed to be done privately, but it caught the attention of many in Jacksonville. This caught the attention of Arthur Marvin of the American Mutoscope Company, who was in Tampa at the time awaiting news about the impending Spanish-American War. He and his crew were given permission to film there, having their cameras situated within the jail yard. But not all of it, since it took 15 minutes for Henson to die by strangulation. The film ends before then, and afterwards his body was lowered to the crowd so it could be seen if he was dead. The film would be viewed at multiple screenings until 1902, with it doing incredibly well financially. Many seek to find it due to its historical significance, showing an early fascination of gore films and how bleak racial tensions were at the time. It is confirmed that the Mutoscope reel still exists, being sold in an auction in 2015. Its buyer got it for $3,600, though it has kept it to themselves and never publicly released it. All we have from it are a few eerie stills.